This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, we've got some rare good news from the courts in a few very red states. But first, before we start, I want to note that this is our 100th episode of Democracy Watch. So, first off, let me just say to the viewers, thank you for caring about this stuff. No one in the mainstream media covers even 1/100th of this stuff because I think they wrongly assume that people don't care. But you all watching are a testament to the fact that they do. The first 99 episodes of this series got 60 million views. So that is 60 million reasons to push back against what the mainstream media is thinking on this issue. And Mark, I know that I can speak on behalf of everybody watching. Thank you for the work that you do. So much of what you and your team do to protect democracy doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, but the impact that you guys are having can't be overstated. If and when our democracy survives past November of 2024, it'll be in large part thanks to you and your team. So again, thank you for the work that you're doing, and also for taking time to speak directly to so many people here on YouTube. We're all better informed because of you, and we're all beyond appreciative that we've got you and Elias Law Group and Democracy Docket on our side, and also that you haven't taken up Lou Dobbs on his offer to switch sides for $500 million.
No, but I am glad that you had the foresight to reach out to me when you had a vision for this, and everyone ought to be clear. Brian is a visionary when it comes to making sure people understand the stakes around democracy, not just in this series, but in all of the series. And I hope everyone subscribes to all of the programming that he puts out. But Brian, when you approached me, I didn't see it at first, but you were entirely right. There is no place for people to go and get good, reliable, day in, week out information about what is happening to democracy in courts, which is one of the main battlefields of democracy. I mean, if there's one thing we learned after 2020, it is that the courts play such a central role in free and fair elections and in ensuring that we have a peaceful transfer of power in democracy. And it was really your vision that created this. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything you have done to help conceive of this, to help nurture it, to help build an audience for it, and to really educate everybody out there who has been listening.
Well, I appreciate that. I think we're all better off because of this series. So let's jump into episode 100 here. Again, we've got some rare good news here from the courts in some very red states. So Mark, walk us through what just happened in the Montana Supreme Court first.
Yeah, so this is an amazing story, and I really think it's one of the underreported stories in the mainstream media. The Montana Supreme Court struck down not one, not two, not three, but four voter suppression laws in one ruling, violating that all four of them violated the state's constitution. This included eliminating election day registration, eliminating student IDs as acceptable forms of ID to vote, prohibiting mailing ballots to new voters who are eligible to vote on election day but are not yet 2018, banning ballot collection, which is a lifeline for Native American voters in the states who live on reservations. When we talk about banning ballot collection, when Republicans talk about banning ballot collection, or what they call ballot harvesting, in a state like Montana, what they are saying is they don't want Native Americans to vote. And this is not just a landmark victory for the voters of Montana. It is a landmark case in which the Montana Supreme Court applied heightened scrutiny to laws that restrict voting rights. It is a model opinion that courts around the country can look at. And I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there is a critical U.S. Senate race. It is likely that the day after the election, we will wake up trying to figure out who controls the U.S. Senate. And one of the states we'll be looking at is whether Jon Tester was reelected from the great state of Montana. And this ruling will be integral to the ability of Jon Tester to be able to win, of young voters, of college voters, of Native American voters being able to participate in the electoral process.
Well, on the topic of issues coming out of the courts that are going to have major political implications, can you discuss the pending abortion referendum that will likely appear on the November ballot?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I think this is, I'm sure you've covered this across your channels. The kryptonite of the Republican Party is the issue of abortion. The thing they have not been able to figure out is what to do when abortion in any way, shape, or form is on the ballot. Even in the recent election where IVF was a sort of a side issue, you saw a Democrat win a state legislative race, in a deeply red district, in a deeply red state. In Florida, it's going to be on the ballot. In Montana, it will be on the ballot. In Nevada, it will almost certainly be on the ballot. And Republicans have no answer to this. They fought for decades to get a Supreme Court to overturn a woman's right to control her own body and have access to safe abortion care. And now they are reaping this at the ballot box, and it will play a critical role in several states in 2024.
I'm going to ask you to put your pundit hat on a little bit, but how much of a boon will that referendum be for Jon Tester's reelection prospects, in your opinion? Because you were just talking about the importance that Montana's Senate election is going to have.
I think it'll be an enormous boon for Jon Tester. I think it'll be an enormous boon for a number of Senate states, including presidential rates. But you look at Montana. Montana is a red state, but it is also a very, very pro-choice state. The Republicans in the West are not the kind of Republicans you see in Alabama or Mississippi. These are Republicans oftentimes because they want less government involvement in their lives. And abortion rights fits center square with their conception of individual liberty and freedom. And the guy he's running against, is not from Montana, and it does not fit the state. I think Jon Tester is going to win. And I think the issue of voting rights will be center stage. The fact that Republicans tried to disenfranchise people, and the issue of abortion rights will be center stage in turning out voters who might otherwise think, the presidential race is not really going to come down to Montana, but I need to show up and vote.
I think what's ironic is you mentioned that Montana Republicans aren't Alabama Republicans. Even Alabama Republicans are pro-choice. Marilyn Lands just flipped a seat in Alabama's state house by a margin of 25 points compared to the Republican who held it before her. And she ran her campaign, again, in Alabama, in like deep red Alabama, predicated on abortion and IVF. So even Alabama Republicans are more liberal on this issue than anybody would have ever imagined. So, to your earlier point, we did get that similar news out of Florida that the abortion referendum would appear on the November ballot. Do you believe that puts Democrats within striking distance in that state, despite its longstanding move to the right over these last couple decades?
Okay, first of all, I think that race was going to be tighter than people thought before. And let's just remember, Rick Scott, who is the incumbent Republican senator, he has never won his elections by wide margins. I mean, 6 years ago, he won by 0.1%. He won the Senate race, 0.1%. Rick Scott is a fundamentally flawed individual that the people of Florida don't like.
He also perpetuated the largest Medicare fraud against the country and was levied I think it was a $1.7 billion fine at the time, which was the largest fine the DOJ has ever levied against anyone because he committed Medicare fraud when he was the CEO of Columbia HCA Hospital.
Correct. Right. So let's just start with that. So before everyone says, this race was going to be a blowout Republican race, that was never true. But let me tell you, this abortion ballot initiative being on the ballot at the same time that the Florida Supreme Court effectively outlaws abortion in the state, it is bad for the women of Florida. It is bad for the voters of Florida that the Florida Supreme Court ruled the way they did on abortion rights. But I got to tell you, if I'm Rick Scott, I'm looking at what my post-Senate employment opportunities are. I think this Senate race in Florida now goes to toss-up, and I mean that, a true toss-up between the two sides. And put on top of that, and I've said this before, and like everyone just mark this, however you mark things on YouTube, mark it and come back to this after the election. Donald Trump hates Ron DeSantis. The party in Florida is divided. The Florida Republican Party is not of one mind. They are at war with one another. And when you take a party at war with one another and you have an unpopular governor and you have an unpopular Senate candidate, and you have a charged electorate who is angry about what the state Supreme Court has just done on abortion, and they have the means to flip it at 60%. You know, Republicans in some states tried to get a 60% threshold because they thought they were being clever. A 60% threshold for this initiative in Florida is a dream for Democrats. It is a nightmare for Republicans because it is going to turbocharge turnout like you have never seen. And those people turning out are not going to be voting for Rick Scott.
And finally, on that point, Arizona organizers have announced that they have enough signatures now for a ballot measure on abortion protecting that in their state constitution. How important will that be in a state that you've sounded the alarm about quite a bit?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, honestly, you know, let's just start with the fact that Kari Lake is insane. You know,
Yeah.
The mainstream media wanted to write and did write for several weeks this, you know, Kari Lake has gone mainstream, only to turn out that she's actually as nuts as ever. You know, she's still an election denier. She's, you know, hanging out with Mike Lindell in the U.S. Supreme Court. And on top of all of that, you have Ruben Gallego, who's a very good candidate running for Senate on the Democratic side. And like I said, on top of that, now you will have likely a ballot initiative on the ballot around abortion. Well, Kari Lake will show her true colors once again, with or without this initiative. But with this initiative, you again have the perfect storm of energy coming from people. Again, a party that is from kind of a more libertarian wing in Arizona. I think this moves this race decidedly to leans Democrat in the Senate race. I think it moves this race to probably slightly leans Biden in the presidential race. The fact that abortion will be front and center in Arizona is a gift to Democrats up and down the ballot in Arizona. And, you know, the conservatives on the Supreme Court said that women are not without electoral power. In the Dobbs decision, I think they didn't know quite what they were writing, but they were 100% right. And I think we're going to see that in Montana, in Florida, and in Arizona.
Perfectly put. We'll leave it there. Marc, one last thing here. Just wanted to extend a little special thank you here. So I think we have something that your team is going to bring to you right now.
Oh my God!
Just to say thanks here.
We have a cake, everyone. There's a cake. There's a look at this, Sophie here with the cake.
Let's see. You gotta turn it a little bit more.
Oh,
Congrats on 100.
Hold on.
You can see it.
Let's get this.
Yeah, you can see it. It's in there.
All right, there it is. Congrats on 100. It's our cake, Brian.
That's it.
And we're gonna celebrate, and we're gonna eat the cake. And everybody, subscribe to Democracy Docket. Subscribe to Brian's channel, and make sure you keep watching Democracy Watch, because week in, week out, we are telling you what you need to know to stay informed about democracy in the courts.
We'll leave it there. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.